Welcome to our presentation on supporting students with English as a second language. When choosing a problem of practice, our group focused on what felt most significant. Two themes stood out, student mental health and supporting students with English as a second language. The decision became clear when some members shared their own challenges learning English in Australia, underlining how vital it is for teachers to have the preparation and resources to support EALD learners. At first, we considered a broader focus, including refugees, Indigenous children, and international students, alongside teacher training and pedagogy. Ultimately, we narrowed it down to two key areas: teacher preparation and pedagogy, and the effects of mistreatment on second language speakers, particularly international and refugee students. Research reinforced the urgency of this issue. Overhead 2016 found that many mainstream teachers feel underprepared to meet the needs of EAL learners, leaving students at risk of disengagement or even dropping out when the curriculum feels overwhelming. Beyond language barriers, EALD learners often face discrimination that affect both learning and well-being. Da Vinci 2020 links accent bullying and stereotyping to serious psychological harm, while Nadu 2015 critiques the one-size-fits-all approach that leaves learners unseen and struggling with limited English. Together, these studies show just why we chose this issue. Supporting EALD learners is more than about language. It's about equity, identity, and ensuring all students can participate fully in education. To locate high-quality research, we search respected databases such as ERIC, A+ Education, Google Scholar, and the WSU Library. We refined results using Boolean logic, e.g. secondary education, ESL, and pedagogy, and filtered for high-impact journals like Taylor and Francis, while also exploring keywords around teacher training and language diversity. Our search returned hundreds of results, so we refined carefully. We then applied strict criteria. That was peer-reviewed articles from 2015 to 2025, Australian or closely relevant context, so Western context, and specifically secondary schools, and imperial research such as case studies or mixed methods. We also prioritized multiple perspectives, including teacher and student. Abstracts were screened for methodological rigor, participant representation, and contextual fit. This reduced the pool down to just 11 studies. To keep the analysis focused, we narrowed it down to three key studies: Overhead 2016, which is a qualitative case study on teacher preparedness; Da Vinci 2020, which is an ethnographic study on linguistic racism and student well-being; and Nadu 2015, a mixed method study on refugee background students across schools and universities.
The article aims to assess and understand the challenges students from refugee backgrounds specifically face during their high school education. The article also chose refugee backgrounds and specifically due to the data showing the major setbacks this group faces in the job market. The research methods used are multifaceted methods, including a multi-site and qualitative design to evaluate both high school and university students. The results are split into three main sections within the article, including life experiences, language development, and learning environments. This creates clarity within the results. However, the shortcomings are not clearly addressed by the author. However, they do mention the need for further research into the topic. The author suggests multiple steps in future research. They include similar themes to the study. These steps include school and university partnership programs that address intercultural understandings, language support within schools and universities, and more inclusive, effective educational culture. The second study aims to understand and expand on the topic of linguistic racism by better understanding two factors: accent bullying and linguistic stereotyping. It also tries to understand the psychological damages that these forms of racism have on international students in Australia. This is a qualitative study that uses interviews based on ethnographic and linguistic approaches. The data in this study is accumulated from a large ethnographic research project as well as from this study. The study uses 30 interviews, 9 of which are directly from the study, while 21 are from a larger research project. Results in this article are directly correlated to the aims of the study, which include accent bullying and linguistic racism, associating those forms of racism to psychological damage. The study uses the detailed and in-depth analysis of a single participant to emphasize the results. The author does not necessarily address the shortcomings of the study. However, a small sample size of 9 and the focus on one interview do provide a shortcoming in this study. For future research and suggestion for practice, the author's conclusion indicate that and integrated research regarding both linguistic racism and psychological damage might be beneficial in developing a better intervention system of support for international students in Australia. This implies that the authors support for further research on the subject.
The main purpose of Sue Ollerhead's study, Pedagogical Language Knowledge, preparing Australian pre-service teachers to support English language learners, was to see how a teaching practicum combined with university preparations helped pre-service teachers develop the skills to teach language and literacy. This matters because supporting EAL learners is a national priority, yet most teachers aren't fully trained for these needs. The study used 8 second-year education students working with disadvantaged Pacific Islander and Aboriginal learners. Through tutoring, workshops, and mentoring, the teachers gained both theory and practice with interviews held before and after the program. Results showed growth in 4 areas: using literacy strategies, teaching text structures, supporting oral language, and building subject-specific literacy. Teachers also felt more confident. However, there were limits. Only 8 participants and not many opposing views were reported, which reduces generalization. Still, the study filled an important gap since little was known about how teachers actually developed this knowledge during their training. Ollerhead recommended that teacher education include more explicit literacy teaching, strong mentoring, and larger studies to keep building evidence. While researching, we searched for peer-reviewed journals from the last 10 years, focusing on high-impact publishers like Taylor and Francis. Keywords such as secondary education, ESL, teacher training, and language diversity were used. Only studies with strong methods and direct relevance to the Australian secondary schools were included. Secondly, relevant studies that examine how teachers prepare for diverse classrooms and the challenges both teachers and students faced were used. The research quality was very high. All articles were peer-reviewed, used mixed methods or data triangulation, and were published in respected journals. Authors such as Sue Ollerhead and Loshni Naidu are recognized experts in ESL pedagogy. Overall, the studies were credible, rigorous, and provided useful frameworks for improving language support in Australian secondary schools.
Across Ollerhead, Naidu, and Trent, one message is consistent. Language support must be explicit, succinct, and embedded in everyday teaching. Ollerhead shows that when pre-service teachers learn to unpack the language demands of each subject and are coached in explicit literacy pedagogy, students gain real access to the curriculum. Naidu makes it clear that support cannot be a short stopover in an REC. It needs to be a joiner pathway from schools into university, underpinned by inclusive cultures and resources. Trent wants that none of this will stick if linguist racism undermines confidence and mental health. Belongings and safety are preconditions of learning. So do these articles conflict each other? No. They put different levels of the same system: classroom practice, institutional pathways, and cultural well-being conditions. The main tension is evidence-based, small qualitative samples with system-level claim. So we treat our finding as directional rather than universal. What do we learn and conclude? Effective ESL support is a 3-path commitment. First, routine PLK training for teachers. Second, sustained academic language pathways across sectors. And anti-racism plus integrated well-being supports. If any leg is missing, equity wobbles. So our next step is simple: build a bridge, maintain it, and protect it, instructionally, institutionally, and culturally. And here's our reference.